Hey, this is Kuwait at DoneDone, and in this video I want to take you through how I progress through a feature. I just got through about a 2-hour feature development cycle for a very small little addition we're making at DoneDone, and decided to kind of trace my way through those 2 hours, what I was thinking about. There's some design involved, there's a little bit of technical stuff involved, but I've always wanted to do a video like this, but too often we're building features that are a little bit too big to do a video on at least. So this is a very small feature, but there's still a lot of interesting things in it, so hope you enjoy it. So the feature I was working on today is basically building a single page that allows monthly customers on DoneDone to switch to annual with just one click. It's part of a email campaign we have that we send out to folks that are on the monthly plan, and we just want to give them an opportunity, a quick way to switch to annual because there's a savings involved. And so this is the DoneDone ticket for it. And as I mentioned in a previous video, when we are doing feature development, even big features, they often reside in just a single ticket. I bounce ideas back and forth with my business partners, and we just kind of get everything done here. It's really simple. There's not a lot of overhead. So let me show you the completed feature. So what I actually did at the end of the 2-hour session. So here is the switch to annual page that I built. It's only available to the account owners because they are the folks that have access to billing. I would expect them to come here from the email that's driven through the email campaign, and here they'd be able to see that they can save 20% annually by switching from monthly to annual, and it also tells them when that would start, so it would start on their next bill date. And then you would click on this if you're ready to switch to annual, and in a second it'll just refresh, and here is the acknowledgement that they are now on annual billing with a link to go to their billing page. Now, usually when I'm building a feature, I'm not doing a whole lot of wireframing, a whole lot of speccing. I like to just get right to code and start to build things. I think we as designers and developers get too caught up in trying to get all the pieces right before we go in. But to me, I think it's usually more efficient to just get right into code. If there's anything I'm doing that's completely wrong or off base, you can easily revert things. That's not a luxury you have in many other media. You have that luxury in programming, so I like to take full advantage of it. The other thing I like to think about is where the right place is to begin. And for me, that place is a place that feels interesting, easy, comfortable. For a feature like this, that place was the design. When I design in code, because I'm not using other tools, I'm not using Figma, I'm not using Sketch, I just get right into the code. I just like to evolve the design as I go, and I become very comfortable with using HTML, CSS, TypeScript, using those tools as the tools for design, not just the tools for development. So over the course of about 45 minutes, I took about 6 different screenshots to show you the progression of this design that's done directly on the app, just so you can see my thought process and how things evolve. So the initial step was just to get the page set up, get the logic around it correct in terms of who has access to this page. In this case, only folks that are owners of an account will be able to go to this switch to annual page. So my first take is just to get it there, and decided to go with something that would be center aligned both vertically and horizontally. I'm starting here just to have something there. The first iteration I have, I'm thinking about text, I'm thinking about what it should say. I've also at this point started thinking about what the model is, so what's the data I need to pass back to the screen. In this case, there's 2 pieces of information here: the name of the person who's viewing this page, the logged in user, as well as the date of their next payment, because that will be the day that their current monthly plan would switch to annual should they want to convert. So just getting some text ideas out there. You're not just thinking about what it's saying, but also thinking visually. Is it going to be a couple paragraphs, one big paragraph, a sentence or two, just getting that spaced out. Also just introducing here just a different font style. We use about 3 different kinds of font stylings. One's a little scriptier, one's a serif, and one's a sans serif. So just trying to figure out what feels right. Again, this is all just sketching in real time with HTML. In the next iteration, I decided, okay, let's start getting into the design a little bit. Switch to our Rubik font here, which is the base font we use throughout the app. Moving the script font here to the bottom for our signature. So it's starting to evolve, right? It's starting to get to something that looks a bit designed. And then I'm thinking also at this point about the the line heights between paragraphs and the padding around this framed area in the text. So I want to get all that stuff comfortable. So much of good design has to do with spacing. So it has to do with the padding between the text and the edges of the container the text is in, between the space between paragraphs, between the space between lines, the letter spacing, all those kinds of things. So those are things that I'm constantly noodling with. There's no beginning or end to it during the process of getting this on screen. In this next iteration, I decided to throw a logo on there just to have some continuity from going from that email that they're clicking on, the link from the email to here, so they know they're still on DoneDone and not somewhere else. And then I really kind of get into figuring out not only refining the spacing, but also the fonts. So going to the sans serif, which I think, or I should say the serif, which I think gives it a little bit more of like a letter, kind of like a personal feel to it, and centering the low here. And then I also got rid of, as you can see in these other ones, I had this little bit of border with the rounded corners. I wanted this to feel more like a letter, so I wanted the there's actually a very, very slight little border here just to soften it up a bit, but it looks otherwise pretty much like a rectangle. And then throwing in the button to actually do the switch, make sure it's big. And then I did a little bit of a drop shadow. This is a theme we use throughout the app, and it felt right here. And then finally I decided just to center this up so that it aligns with the logo. I think this feels a little bit better than having it on the left. So with the design of that screen fleshed out, I moved to the back end, and this is where I wanted to flesh out the functionality of clicking that button and having it switch the account to annual on their next billing cycle. The good thing about this is that I already have that functionality built out, because when you're inside of the billing page normally, you can go to this link here, and this allows you to switch your plan for the next billing cycle. So really, the clicking of the button on that new screen is identical to me saying that I'm going to switch to the annual plan here and then updating the subscription. So that was just a matter of hooking that bit of logic to the button click. So now with the initial screen built and then the functionality to do the conversion, I'm now moving back to the front end to build out the results screen. I didn't spend a lot of time on this design. Really, it's derivative from the original design. It was just a matter of getting in the right text that made it clear that you've now switched to annual billing, and then just providing this link so that there's a way to get back into the app. So at this point, the feature is roughly done, which means it's anywhere from 40 or 50% done to 90% done. And so what I'll typically do now is take a step back using the feature and then figuring out where I need to fill in some gaps, where I need to polish some things up. So one of the first things I picked up that I wanted to flesh out was the transition from clicking the button to having that screen refresh once the annual billing update has been made. That process does take a little bit of time because there's a connection to Stripe we have to make and some things we need to tweak on the back end. So instead of just having that button sit there, I added that loading loop as the next step. So the first time I tested this whole feature end to end, I ran into a bug. I was simulating a monthly account owner, and when I did the switch to annual, I didn't actually get that second screen. And the reason was a flaw in my logic, which then led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and this happens a lot in feature development, even for small features. My initial thinking was that the people that should be able to see that first screen is simply monthly account owners, and the people that should see that second screen is annual account owners, because they've now switched to annual. Of course, when I went through this, I realized that that's actually not how we originally implemented this feature, for good reason. When you're actually doing the switch to the annual plan, you're not actually changing yourself to an annual user right there. What it is doing instead is adding a flag in our database that says at the end of the current billing cycle, you should then now be moved to the annual plan. So in reality, you're still a monthly account owner until the end of your billing cycle, which might be anywhere from a few minutes from now to 30 days from now. So I spent about 15 minutes fleshing out the logic here and getting it to a good spot. And this usually leads me to the final part of any feature development, which is thinking about edge cases. So I know that this page is really intended for current monthly owners that we want to encourage to switch to annual. But what about somebody who's already on an annual plan and they stumble upon this URL or just type it in? Now, again, that's an edge case. Most folks are just going to be going through the email to get to this page, but I want to make sure I'm handling all the possibilities. Now, on one hand, if you're an annual owner, I could simply throw an exception if you go to this page, because it should only be for monthly owners. But as I'm thinking through this edge case more and more, there's actually a particular scenario where I may want to expose this page to you. For instance, you're an annual account owner who maybe a couple days ago decided to switch back to monthly. Well, if you go to this page, I probably should offer you the option to go back to annual. And so the logic is starting to morph now. The people that should have access to this page are not whether they're monthly or annual right now, but what are they in their next billing cycle. So I then tweak this logic to say that if your next billing cycle is going to be monthly, you should be able to see this page. And that goes for whether you're monthly now or whether you're annual now. Now this then required me to augment some of the logic on the post, because now you can either be a monthly account owner that is switching to the annual plan at the end of the billing cycle, or you could be an annual owner who's already switched for the next cycle that needs to go back to the annual cycle. So I've got now conditional on the post that first looks at which plan you're on currently and then decides what to do for the next plan. So I end up implementing this logic, now testing cases not just for monthly account owners, but really 4 cases: monthly account owners that haven't switched yet, monthly account owners that have switched, annual account owners that haven't switched, and annual account owners that have switched back to monthly. So testing all 4 of those scenarios, making sure the access and the behavior is correct. So that's really it for this feature. Really simple feature, but there's all sorts of nuances that are involved once you kind of get into the nitty gritty. So hope you enjoyed this look at how I develop feature DoneDone.